Good morning, everyone. And today we're gathered here today for the purpose of looking at the 2023 budget. So the purpose of the meeting today is the presentation of the proposed 2023 operation and capital budget. I'll ask council if they have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Seeing none at this time, I'd also like to acknowledge everybody who's tuning in today through our Warwick Township YouTube link. I'd also like to make acknowledgement of the ancestral lands. We acknowledge the land on which we are gathered here today. Township of Warwick is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, as well as the many Indigenous nations in Ontario. So we're going to start off with delegations and events, and we have Don Jones with us. Don, could you please come up to the front here, and we'll give Don a chance to settle in. So Don is here to talk about Zion Line, and Don, what I'll do is I'm going to turn my microwave off, and if we push the button, then you'll be live. Okay.
Good morning, council members. This morning I'm going to talk about the proposed, I call it bandage fix for the road on Zion. The original, and these are numbers I'm just quoting. Or not quoting, but I think are right. The original survey was done in 2020 for the road work. Another one was done after the 2022 truck convoy. I could be wrong on those. And I'm assuming everyone's had a chance to look over the proposal. And like, once again, it's a bandage fix. I'd like to know how you're to get a proper seal on the road when you're going from removing asphalt to replacing the asphalt to pulverizing it and replacing it. And those are backing onto pieces that are being surface treated or just crack sealed. And there's also spots on the road where it's surface treatment on one side, crack seal on the other. I just don't see a proper seal. And that's my biggest concern about it, is that I don't see it being completely sealed that way. And you're just looking for problems, down the road in a year or two. Another one is that your road crews for several years now have been doing a good job trying to keep the road patched. And there's a lot of patchwork. I don't know how many of you drive up and down that road, but every year it's getting worse and worse. And then I wonder why there's certain sections between Bethesda and First School Road. There's no proposal for any road work there. And then going the other way, it stops at Arkona Road and doesn't extend any farther. Now, the other part is several years ago, Confederation Road was completely ripped up, repaved. I feel we have as much or more traffic on Zion than Confed, and I don't know why it can't be fully ripped up and repaved. And then it's good for a few years down the road. There should be no upkeep on it, especially when the 402 gets shut down. Our road, the traffic increase from Nauvoo to that would be London Line. The traffic flow at that time is an overload, I'll say, because it only takes one person coming off the 402 to go left, and everybody seems to follow them. And the same coming out of a Forest Road, if it's shut off there, when they come off, they make the turn. There's a lot of trucks. Believe me, when I was working, sometimes it was a nightmare to turn into a driveway because of the traffic that was coming. I know there's nothing you can do about that. If the road 402 shuts down, the traffic's got to go somewhere. But the last few years, there was the Warwick Bridge. When that was replaced, same thing. A lot of traffic came through our road, and I was told that it wasn't designed for that, but it happened. They done the the roundabout. Same thing. People coming off the 402 couldn't go north. They came south, Zion line. Same thing. I know that wasn't, and I know you're dealing with problems on Arcona Road because of some of that. But I just see it as a complete patchwork trying to hit spots here and there and resurface, you know, sections and rip up and repave other sections. I know it's a money issue, but there was, I believe, was it 800,000 allotted last year for road? I think that's the number I was given. That should have carried over to this year's budget. So, I mean, you're starting with 800,000. I'm sure it's going to be more than that to replace it. But, you know, do you do it in sections instead of doing it all at once? Do one section, you know, this year, another section next year. But I mean, there's, like I said, it's getting bad. I've talked to some of the truck drivers that go down it, and they said it's getting tough to keep their rigs on the road because they're wanting to bounce all over because of the cracks and the pavement repairs. So that's about all I have to say about that. I can't say a whole lot more about the road. So I'd like to thank you for listening to my concerns.
Well, Don, just thank you very much for your presentation. And you're right. There was an awful lot more impact on that road than I think anybody ever thought there was going to be back when the study was done. So that does make a difference. Maybe what I'll do, I know council may have some questions and
Yep.
I'll ask you to stay there. But Andrew, did you want to comment on Don's presentation, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Case. And thanks, Don, for bringing your items to council. So just a little bit of background on the decisions that are made and how this gets brought to council. So there was a condition assessment that was done on all our paved roads. And within that condition assessment, of course, they surveyed the road and they look at things based on drivability, condition of the road. And in this particular case, they identified many of the sections along Zion Road to be classified as a D road. So of course, A would be the best, F being the very worst, and which Confederation line, you brought that up, was actually an F road. So in very poor condition, as we are all well aware. This on average is a D road, with one section being a C, which is that's the section that doesn't have a lot, if or any work that's proposed. The purpose of the work that's been proposed from the engineer eliminates any further degradation because of the cracks, you know, in the short to long term. So the sealing cracks up or seals up all the little cracks, improves the drivability, and of course the pulverizing and the replacement of asphalt for the really bad areas that are fairly dangerous. That would be a full pulverize and pave. So no, it's not a full repave. It doesn't bring back to a complete perfect road, but it brings the surface level back to an acceptable level, which should extend the life a little bit further, you know, typically 5 to 8 years further down the road before any major roadworks are redone. So that's the purpose of the roadworks that have been proposed. And of course, dollars are certainly a major factor in all this.
So if I could, do we have any idea what it would cost? Don's brought up some good points here. Do we have any idea what it would cost to replace it and do it the way we did on Confed? I mean, it is an option to do it in sections, as Don has brought up. Is that kind of information available? Not to try to put you on the spot, Andrew, but do you have that kind of information or rough information if council decided to maybe go that direction?
We do have that information. So within the study, of course, we request replacement values, and these values are based on 2021 numbers. So things have changed slightly since that time with inflation. But we expect somewhere around $35 to $38 a square meter for pulverizing and replacement of the asphalt alone. So to answer your question, it would be around the 3 million, very high level number. It'd be about 3 million to replace from Arcona Road heading all the way westerly to London line.
So we would be talking an additional 2.2 million over and above the $800,000.
That's correct.
Pardon me?
Just for perspective, it was 429,000 last year. That was in the budget.
Okay, so misinformation back to Don and I guess to me too. So at the end of the day, so I guess that's what we're looking at. And of course, when we did Confederation, we did get a grant. There was a $1.6 million grant back 5 years ago or whatever that did help. But there's no doubt about it, Don. You're absolutely, I don't disagree with you. I mean, whenever we're doing these things, it comes down to the dollars, but at the same time, it's better to do them right off the bat. And so I guess, is there any other questions you have at this point in time of what's been said by Andrew or anything else? And then I'll ask council if they have any questions.
Oops. Yeah, I'm just with the crack seal. My wife and we walk the road a lot we take our dog out for walks. So we walk the road a lot. Some of those cracks are extremely big. I don't know how they're supposed to seal that with pouring some hot tar in there. Yeah, and once again, there's some big dips in the road. Those are going to have to be dealt with regardless of what they do. And that's all it, I was just trying to figure out what could happen. And then there's some other spots where there's some little hills, the shoulders are being washed down and that's got to be dealt with every year. Like, I don't know whether they can, at the time they're doing it, they can put in like a pavement run down to a catch basin, like they did on Confed, just to take care of that problem. So that's other than that, that's my concerns.
Oh, I appreciate that, Don. Anybody on council have any questions or comments on this particular item at this time? Yes, Councilor Morris.
I guess, Andrew, we're spending $629,000 on this road, which the numbers you just kind of would repave and totally redo a fifth of it. So there's a lot of road there. A fifth of it being done, will that help or solve our problem, or like to get the full road done, we'd have to put another 12% tax increase, something like that?
100%.
100% tax increase. It was 10% or one digit off. So what do you think about if we did a fifth of the road and didn't do anything else? Is that in your mind, a feasible situation?
So if I understand the question correctly, being a fifth would be a road, pulverizing a replacement of a fifth of the road. On Zion line, there are portions, there's multiple sections of the road that are in fairly poor condition where they are pulverizing, replacing portions. So if you just did the most westerly section between London line and the next road, you wouldn't be identifying some of the safety hazards going east, where those would have to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on council have any questions for our presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much, Don. We will keep in touch and let you know what decisions made at the end of the day. But thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, council, the next piece of business is number 6, and this was about a council health benefit. And this is just information, to be very honest with you. Some of the other municipalities were looking at it in Lambton as well. So again, it's there for your reference. Again, it's information. If it's something that council wants to further discuss, we could bring it back in our February meeting. And if you have any more questions about it, you can talk to Linda Shea, our deputy treasurer. So we'll leave it at that unless there was anybody that had any questions on that. I think we can tuck that away. It's all about potential cost recovery. So if everybody's good with that, we'll leave it at that and continue on with the budget process. Pretty good? Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to, actually, I'm going to go to my donations. Give me 1 second. I'm having a little trouble with my iPad. Bear with me for a second here. Because we're going to go to donation request councils. So if everybody's there, that would be 6B. Is everybody on 6B? Okay. So we have some requests there. How does council wish to deal with the requests that they're all financial except for the one from the Watford Scouts, right, Amanda? It's more about facility opportunities?
Yes.
Okay, so they're looking for an opportunity to be able to use the facilities a little more often. Right now, it's tough, things are booked. So they're looking for some cooperation. I think that's something that we can look at as a council, as a rec department through Ryan, when there are opportunities, openings where maybe we can try to slide them in, Ryan. It's kind of my thought. You agree with that kind of thinking?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. That makes great sense to me, and I'll ensure we continue the dialogue with them on opportunities that may be available in terms of the space.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Again, it's just a matter of trying to utilize our facilities and be able to have the opportunity for as many people to use it, but at the same time, collecting some revenue, obviously, to offset the costs. So we will communicate back to the Scout organization. Again, it was not a financial ask. It was an ask of resources at the center. So if council is okay with that, we can communicate back with them and see if we can't find some solutions on that. Is council okay with that? I see everybody's head nodding. That's great. Okay, we'll go back to the list then. So the list is there, council. We can go through them one by one. We have the Watford Girl Guides that have requested $1,000 grant. How does council wish to deal with that particular issue? Councillor Westgate.
This 1,000, that's just going to cover the time that they had in the Centennial Hall now that they're being charged for in the new hall?
Yes, sir. That would cover their yearly rent for the most part.
Thanks.
Yes, Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. If I could, I just want to point out that the costs that they have that have been provided to them for the use in the new East Lambton Community Complex is in line with the same pricing they were charged with Centennial Hall. So they were in fact paying the $20 recreation rate in the past years, and that has continued on to the new complex, just for clarity.
And I think that's how the $1,000 number was arrived at. I mean, I think that they're like a lot of organizations having some tough times, and that's why the ask is here today before council. That would offset their costs. How does council wish to deal with the request? Yes, Councillor Westgate.
I have one more question. Maybe Optimus Joe knows. Did the Optimus not cover their costs the last few years for that?
Yeah, I believe we just gave them a donation not too long ago, or with this almost exact same request.
So again, the Optimus has dealt with it. This is an ask of us as a municipal council. And I guess I'm looking for direction one way or the other from council on this particular item. Yes, Councillor Morris.
The Boy Scouts should be entitled to the same type of a situation, I think. And if the Optimists have already donated the money for this, I'd like to find out some more information and put this off of budget to regular council until we find out some more facts, maybe exactly what the Optimists gave them and what it was to be used for.
All right. How does the rest of council feel with we could park this one for some more information? There's nothing saying we're going to pass this budget today at the end of the day anyways. So a little bit more information. Is that what council is asking for on that? Okay, very good. We'll move on from that one then. Let's go to the Lambton County Plowmen's Association, and that's their ask, I believe, of $500. It's a first time ask in this organization. How does council wish to deal with this request?
I think we should support this.
Motion to support from Councillor Morris. Is there a seconder to the motion?
second that.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Kallenberg. Further discussion on this one? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Your question?
I'm not sure.
It's $500, isn't it? $500 was requested. That would be what was approved. No problem. And then we go to Watford Community Improvements, Inc. And there's a request there as well. I'm not sure exactly what they're asking for. I know that we've given them a grant in the past. Trevor, do you have any insight on this?
It's pretty open-ended. They get 2,000 a year, and have for my time here. I think they have a lot of capital projects coming down the pipeline this year that need to be addressed, and they're just doing a call to see what is available. And I think that's why it's so open-ended at this time.
Okay, so the annual request of the annual amount that's been given of $2,000 is part of our pre-approved list. So we don't need a motion to do that because it's already there. So is this one that we need a little more further investigation? Because it looks almost like they're asking for monies over and above without asking for monies. They reference a couple situations. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, during the election period, I had the opportunity to talk to Norma Logan, and I didn't realize, and maybe the rest of council, that they are zoned commercial. They're paying commercial taxes. Would like to find out if we talk to the planners, can they be changed to institutional? And then, like, you got to remember their taxes, they're going educational, county and us. So it wouldn't be financially burdened probably much more than the 2,000 would be. But if we could get them changed to industrial, then they'd be pretty well a lot better off. That's what I was wondering.
Amanda.
Thanks, Councillor Morris. We'd be happy to follow up with the planners on that. Certainly, if that's council's direction. I do believe, though, that the property is appropriately zoned for its current use for provision of medical services. So I think it's appropriately zoned based on the use, but again, we can refer that to planning to take a more formal look at and report back to council.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think their taxes were crazily priced, like because they were commercial. That with the way she talked, a lot of their financial problems with capital coming up and need new furnaces would be eliminated if we could get them zoned to institutional. So I'd really like that push. Thanks.
We'd be happy to take that back. I will flag that other medical service providers, our physio location in town or the dentist next door, for example, are zoned commercial. So, and that's why I say, I think they're zoned appropriately. Institutional use is more for government related services or long-term care, that kind of thing. But absolutely, we'll take that direction to bring a report back.
Thank you.
So I think at the end of the day, what we really need is we need some more information. Again, the $2,000 is an ongoing thing. It's part of our pre-approved list. So I think we need to do a little homework. Maybe Mr. Jarrett, we could ask you to do a little bit of have a bit of a discussion with the organization, and we can look at that. And again, when it comes to the tax piece, it's always something we can look at as well, Councillor Morris. But let's just see exactly what these folks are wanting. I mean, they got the 2,000 and they'll go from there. But Deputy Mayor.
I was just wondering if there may be any grants out there because it's medical. I know it's few and far between right now, but maybe there's an opportunity that we can assist them in something like that for some capital stuff.
Oh, that's a very good point. And they are hooked up with Northampton Community Health as well, which gives them lots of opportunity, insight to some of those things as well, Deputy Mayor. So more information is needed here. They obviously have the $2,000 because it's an ongoing process. And we'll leave it at that. So we'll leave it to our treasurer to get back to them and try to find more information. It's pretty hard for us to deal with when we really don't know exactly what they're after. So we'll look at all those things. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. And then there's some correspondence here, and the correspondence is from Jay Aubin, and the correspondence basically references the 3.5% start. Potential tax increase. Again, we're just getting into budget today. We haven't decided anything here. We're just going to start to get into it. And they actually, if I believe, referenced the roundabout out at Nauvoo. And to be honest with you, I just want to set the record straight. That was not, those dollars spent out there were not Warwick Township tax dollars. They were County of Lambton tax dollars, which I mean, we all pay into the system. But to be very honest with you, it was not a burden on the taxpayers of Warwick specifically. It was shared and shouldered by the whole of the County of Lambton. So just to be clear on that, that was not municipal impact on us locally. So I want to clear the record on that and make sure that people understand that had no bearing on our tax situation here. It was a county initiative. and we'll leave it at that. So let's move on. I think I got everything there, Amanda. So let's move on. So I'm going to turn it over to Trevor to take us through the budget. And what I'm going to do today to make it easy, instead of I obviously will be here to chair, but at the same time, I'm going to give Trevor the freedom and ability to go one-on-one as the questions come. He doesn't have to turn it back to me every time. And we'll go through the process together and go from there. So don't worry. Again, Trevor will take the question. He'll address you and we'll keep things moving along here. So Trevor, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mary Case. I'm going to build off where we left off on the draft budget. I want to talk about the changes from that point in time, and then we'll get more into the details of everything else. I don't know if you can bring up the presentation, Amanda, on the shared screen. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, everyone. While we're waiting for that, I'll go over the taxation because that hasn't changed. The tax increase, we'll see growth in the tax base in two ways. First of all, there is a tax base growth due to the fact that there's more homes, more buildings here, and that growth alone, just by adding new CVA value to the community, is $42,000. Each percentage increase of tax is $27,000 in tax increase. So the 3.5% tax increase would generate $96,000 in taxation revenue. So when you combine that 96 with the growth of 42, we're seeing a proposed growth in tax base of 138 to total taxation revenue. For context, I've put it in a 3.5% tax increase adds $21.20 per 100,000 CVA for each household. So it's each household is about 180,000 in terms of value here on current CVA values. So you're looking less than $40. That's the request. And I think Amanda's got everything. So if we can go to slide 2. Slide 2 demonstrates the changes since the draft budget was presented. The top part are operational and the bottom 5 items are all capital. In terms of operational, we've seen an increase in our OCIF funding. It's tied now more into your asset management plan. So there's incentive to keep your asset management plan current. So that was almost 38,000. We trued up and brought in the new amounts for the lagoon lease and the industrial park lease, which total 22,000. Then we have also got a new emergency dispatching system that's going to be rolled out probably late Q2, most likely later in the year for emergency services. It's going to be $4 per household. So we've extrapolated what we expect it to be for each fire station. And we expect to be about $2,500 per station or $5,000 for the year. And then we got a reevaluation on the benefits cost, primary disability and employee health tax, and the impacts on 2 departments, which is a further $12,900. Net, we are adding back to our operating budget of 42,000 to the positive. On the capital side, we've got in revised pricing on several different things and also had an emergent issue. The floor resurfacing, which was part of the 2022 budget for the Warwick station, and it is probably 5 years past due. We expect to be 5,000. As per everything else, it's gone up. It's come in around 30,000. So there's a request for an extra 20 to address that. The emergent replacement generation for the Watford station, which was approved at the last council meeting, has been added for 13,000. We took a 10-year service plan on it because we figured that it's going to pay for itself. But we removed the bunker drying gear rack. It'll be reinserted either in 2024 or 2025. So then that impacted that $6,000. As we've learned in the past several months when we've been over at Warwick Community Center, the AV system is a little dated and a little hard to navigate. So Ryan and Brad have worked with suppliers to generate what it would cost to upgrade that to get it be a little more user friendly and reflective of today's technology. We've added in 10,000 for that. The last one is an ERP or migration update to Keystone, which is our financial backbone. That is the last holdover from our last strategic plan. And I, for one, was fighting it. I didn't think it was necessary. However, we're starting to see some legacy issues with Keystone, whereby I think it might be best to go to a new, more secure cloud-based system that offers greater modules that will provide for basically resident interaction. They can go in online, create an account, pay their taxes, book a room. It has to be approved, but they can do all their bookings online and everything. And it rolls out in a modular system. We can bring in e-billing, we can bring in finance, we can bring in GIS so that we can all look up on the screen in a matter of instance and see anything here. And recreation, which allows for online viewing and potentially booking events, programs, and facilities. It's considered what is called a living software. So changes made are real time, whereas what we have right now is more of a static software. Something goes in there, it holds, and it has to be updated daily. It's not as true as it is. I've also reached out to the county. I understand that they're looking at a cloud-based planning software as their first phase. I spoke to the party who's instituting that, getting all the details to see whether or not that's going to be able to tie into what we're looking at, and we believe it will, and we will feed back that information. But that's a request. The number, although it is large, it's 270. Having come from a background of doing this a couple of decades ago, this is nowhere near where I thought it would be. And it's there for your consideration. And I just think it's going to be something that we're going to be forced to do at some point in time. And I'd rather do it at this time to allow our residents and constituents to have greater visibility and control over their destiny. So that's the request there. Next slide, please. It's just a highlight of where we've started and where we've gone to. Everything said and done, we're down to running a proposed deficit of 773, out of which 500 and give me a second. 503 is minor capital. So that's also in the minor capital number. So the 1% tax increase, it's 27,000. In today's day and age, I understand that everything has risen. There's going to be pressure points for all residents and consumers, regardless of what you buy in the next couple of years. I hope that it doesn't go longer than that. If it does, all leading indicators are we're in a recession anyhow. But we have, over the time that I've been here, built up significant reserves where I think we can weather a short-term storm, not long-term, short-term.
Trevor, that 815 from reserves, that's a lot of that is money we put in last year, right? For a certain product.
This is operating, not capital. This is primarily, it's in my other notes that I was going to get to. We brought on 2 new facilities last year, the ELCC and the Township Hall. We have been fortunate that we built reserves by declaring a surplus every year from the additional fees that we've collected for own source revenues to the tune of roughly $1 million. That's where that was supposed to come from for that. So it's essentially a repurposing of that money. If that makes sense to you.
So it's still money we had in reserves from before, a lot of it.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it's money that we put away in reserves over a period of time. For perspective, our reserves have grown to about $3,700 per resident. I will forge on. The next slide relates to capital. Based on the funding that we have right now, we are showing a capital shortfall relative to what we plan to spend of $1.7 million. How do we bridge that? Quite easily, we're going to pull, and we've proposed money from other reserves that we have set up to cover this. The water reserve, all water projects in here are water related projects, which total 367 will come from the water reserve, which is sitting around $2 million right now. But we will put back in next year 440, so it's self-sustaining. The sewer portion of reserves is 84,500, which we'll pull from sewer reserves. We're looking to put back in 90,000 next year. So again, it's self-sustaining. Every year we get 72,000 from Nexera, goes to Community Vibrancy Fund. We feel that can be best used and utilized rather than sitting in a bank to finish the ELCC for the outdoor kitchen for 40,000. We will still add 32,000 back into reserves. Asset management reserve. We have a need to continue to update our asset management plan. We have to do the non-core assets by July 1st, 2025, and also start mapping out our level of services and our life cycle costing modules. The biggest thing we have to do is fleet and do a condition assessment study, because our condition assessment study completed in 2018-19 is dated. Our formula funding from OCIF is tied into the value of your current replacement values. Let's get those current replacement values in today's dollars rather than being stale dated 4 years ago. And it also was silent on climate change, and we're seeing a lot of impacts on climate change today. So we're sitting with a reserve roughly of $75,000 to $80,000 at the end of this year for asset management reserve. That's where that money is going to come from. The balance of all other capital projects, we are sitting with an untapped capital reserve of $2.2 million. I haven't trued up the year end. It's still going to be roughly 1.5 to 2.2, depending on where we finish the year end. All that money is sitting in reserves right now. Can you afford what's in front of you today? Yes. Is it sustainable to afford it long term? No. The question is whether or not it's the best plan for the future. As Mr. Jones brought to the table, I think the degradation in certain roads since the last roads study was done is significant relative to what we were expecting. I don't know when the next refresh of the paved road study is supposed to be. Maybe it's a good idea to take a step back, get that done sooner than later to address the concerns of the residents, and maybe do a full pave and polarize and repave on those roads so that it brings it up to a higher standard, and it allows us time to find out what the actual true situation is from an engineering perspective. Other than that, those are my notes. This budget also includes a continuation of us to put away money for the future by investing another 600,000 to the equity fund in the one fund account. We're presently sitting at a healthy balance in there. We've grown it to 3.7 for long term once end of life occurs with waste management, so we can be self-sustaining up until 2022, because we haven't finalized year, but it was a down year on the markets. We've been pulling in roughly 8% yield on our investments there. I called Infrastructure Ontario to close and move the grant that we have for the ELCC into a debenture loan or a bond loan with them. I expect it to be significantly less than what we're earning in return from our investments. So as soon as I have that information, I will provide that to council and we'll make that decision. Through construction, we paid 0.09% financing on the money, so I'm not really too hustled to get that done because I like that rate. Those are my notes. I turn it over to council, the public, for questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Trevor, for that presentation. So, council, this is our opportunity to get into this budget and start asking some questions, maybe make some suggestions on where we go. Everybody's had lots of time to take a look at the book. We've had it now for probably better part of a month. And Trevor's just given us a recap and some of the changes that have happened since we received the information originally a month ago. Who would like to start us off through the process? Deputy Mayor?
Sure. Actually, I have a couple questions up for roads and stuff. So the gravel budget, is that based on just tonnage in last year's price, or have you scoped out a more recent price of where we actually are? I know we tender it out, but is this, with all the increases, I hate to say, okay, we're gonna spend the same amount of money, but get a third less tonnage. So I'm just curious, Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor Gallenberg. So it is based off of, first, we do have a gravel road study. And there is inflation worked into the numbers. So that's, we do base the numbers based off that, as well as I've talked to suppliers in anticipation of increased prices. So on that note, we have been in consultation with directly with the pits, and we have been advised that supply of the current 70 fracture M gravel that we use is getting scarce, which means it is more expensive. However, there is an alternative that's just, as opposed to 70%, it'd be a 60%. So with this tender, we're asking for a provisional item with both the existing 70% fracture gravel as well as the 60%. So we are looking for both numbers. So we will be able to choose if it's a huge increase in cost, then there is that option to choose a 60% granular M, which is widely used in the county as well as other municipalities that are local.
Thank you. And the other question is, we've been back and forth a little bit on the salt shed. So what, the current one is 40 by 40. And I know the proposed originally was 80 by 100 or something like that.
100 by
100. I guess with costs, I guess how much of your yearly usage can you store in that 40 by 40 now?
So the existing building, the 40 by 40 building is replenished multiple times throughout the year. Of course, that varies, but you can expect prior to just Christmas alone. Again, this was an abnormal year. We didn't have a lot of flurries prior to Christmas, but it's 3 or 4 times before Christmas and then multiple times after to replenish it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, while we're on that subject, I guess I've got a question as well. So I went out and took a look at the old salt shed, and it is seeing its time. It's definitely, its expiry date has come. Is there any thought even of trying to downsize it? Obviously, it's very small, and we do the mixing with the sand and the salt there. Is there any other options that might be available when looking at that building? Again, it's got to be big enough that it works. Obviously, we don't want to build something that's too small at this, but looking at what we got, it's absolutely not working anymore. It just doesn't have the size to do it. So I guess my question is there any other options available, and for maybe doing something different? If that was something that would be acceptable to you and actually the guys that provide the service, we want to make their job easy as well. So question.
Thank you, Mayor Case. Yes, there are alternatives, and we have recently gone out and we've looked at a slightly scaled down building, and of course this is in consultation with staff. So of course we want to make sure that they've got the tools that are appropriate for what we have, as well as anticipating future growth. So the original building size was just over 10,000 square feet. The most recent proposed building is scaled down to 6,000 square feet, which we think would be appropriate. Still allows room for additional material to be stored in there. So you've got your sand and salt mix, as well as a salt storage portion, and we feel there'd be room for cold mix to be stored in a corner. So yes, we have looked at alternatives as well as alternative buildings. We've looked at an alternate building that would be of a different material. So I think some people might be familiar with the fabric roof buildings. We have looked at those as well. From a life cycle costing standpoint, I think there is a bit of risk with ongoing replacement costs or future replacement costs of the roof. But we've looked at it.
Okay, so just a follow up for me on that. Is there a way, because this project came way over budget last year? I'm trying to remember how many dollars exactly it was, but it was it $700,000 roughly over budget? So again, the question I've got, so if we went with something a little lesser size wise, there'd always be the ability to add. I mean, at one time, I think the original project included the wash bay. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So again, I guess trying to find a way to make this work in today's world where prices have gone up 50, 60, 70% in some cases. Again, recognizing we may need more space in days to come. I just wondered at that, I guess the one model that we're talking about right now, not the Tarpola model, it's easy to add because it's mostly a block foundation building. Am I correct?
Yes, the model that we've priced out with the updated costing does, yes, of course you could expand. That's the simple answer. You could expand in the future. And on that note, this reduction in size has reduced the cost by approximately $650,000 to $700,000.
Well, just for the record, we're still looking around $1 million.
That's correct.
Okay, Council Westgate.
On the budget we had for that building last year, I think it was way too high to start with. We had big numbers in for HVAC, which there's very little HVAC, just a fan in the buildings, and electrical. Really, all we need for electrical is a door opener and lights. And they had I think it was 40 or 50,000 in there or more for the last one. We do need the car wash too, though, but we do not need the wash with the salt shed. So I think we need to go ahead with the salt shed no matter what, before this one falls in on us.
So again, this has been going on for, we're into this for the second time around. It's last year's budget, came in over budget. Anybody else have any questions on this particular item? Councilor Morris.
Andrew, if we went to a smaller building and we already have $750,000 in the pot for it so far?
We've got $1 million from last year.
$1 million. And you think we need another 700,000? No, I'm mistaken.
If I could,
Yeah.
Councillor Morse, with the revised numbers we have today, and I apologize that they didn't come any sooner, we wouldn't require any additional costs. We were able to downsize. We might need.
That is for the scaled back 6,000 square foot model compared to the 10 roughly, right?
That is correct. That's for the 6,000 square foot model, which does not include a wash bay.
Councilor Manning.
Yes, Andrew, if we were to go to the scaled back model, how long do you think it would take to have to increase size again? Like how many years roughly would you estimate?
Well, that's a fairly difficult question. If you would have asked me that last year, a year ago, I would have said it's going to happen fairly quickly with the expansion we were seeing in development. I think we can all recognize there's a bit of a pause on that. How long that's going to last with the current recession, I'm not sure. I think this would be suitable for I would say the long term. I wouldn't want to put a number on that, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years, but I think this provides us with a suitable building for now and a good portion of the future.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions on the salt shed right now, or even maybe on the wash bay that was part of last year's proposal? Getting back to the gravel, since the deputy mayor brought it up. Again, we all had lots of opportunity this year, especially during the election campaign, to travel the roads, a lot of the rural roads. And I can say that I really do think that we do need to start putting some extra gravel, in my opinion, on these roads. And being that inflation is chewed up a lot of budget, And there is some money in there that Andrew has included. I think it was an extra $60,000? Yeah, so there's an extra $60,000 in there in the budget. But unfortunately, that extra $60,000 isn't likely going to come across as an extra $60,000 worth of gravel. It's probably going to give us roughly, maybe a little bit more gravel, but the same amount we had before. It's going to cost us 60,000 more. So my question is, if we're sitting here doing our due diligence today, should we be looking at an increase in the amount of gravel to build these roads up again? Because again, as Mr. Jones mentioned in his presentation, not being a gravel road, but he did reference Arcona. We can talk about First School Road and some of the others that had a lot more traffic on them. Our roads have really taken a beating in the last little while. And I guess just from my opinion, and I'm no engineer, but from what I can see with the naked eye, it looks like the roads need some attention and could use some building up in areas. So I'm wondering about if we need to put another maybe $60,000 over and above. I'm just using that as a number. There's no scientific data in that in this budget to be able to start building these roads up again and having that due diligence again, because again, the roads did take a beating last year. And I think we owe it to the people out in the rural area to try to get things back into some good repair. And again, a lot of it wasn't our doing. It was just the situation of all the construction projects around us. And they're talking about even another large construction project maybe this year that will affect some of our roads again a little bit. So just a question maybe to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor Case. Yeah, that's correct. We did talk about an increase of $60,000, which based on our best estimates would equate to about 3,000 extra tons of gravel, 11-12% of the current quantity we currently get. So an additional which would be eaten up by inflation. So an additional 60,000 would be nice. We can focus that additional 12% of gravel onto the heavily hit roads, the Arcona Road, the Hickory Creek line. So it would be well received and would be used.
And just one more question before I turn it over to council while I'm on the subject. Talk about the fracture, the 70 to the 60. I'm always a little worried when we start cutting it back. I know years ago, many years ago, and some of us around this table remember, we really spent a lot of money investing in our roads, putting some better fracture on it, even a little bit of dolomite at one time, which was a great experiment. Unfortunately, it got to be very costly. So I'm always a little concerned about the quality of the gravel we're putting on the road. And it used to be we could identify pits, and I know you've done your due diligence, you said earlier, with checking with some of the pits and so on. But I'm always concerned because we don't want to go backwards. All of a sudden we get the 60 fracture and it doesn't work as well. We've identified the 70. At one time we used to like the 80. I know it's harder to come by the commodity. But that would be my other point I want to make. I really am a little bit cautious about turning the clock back to a lesser grade of gravel. So that's just a comment, and I'll let the rest of council in on this. So Westgate.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. When we first amalgamated, they were putting 50-60% fracture on. It doesn't stay on the road. It's too many round stones in it. It just will not pack in. We need to be at least, I like 70%. I know we made just a practice of going to 80% for a year, and our road superintendent at the time said, "Oh, that's much better. It's much better gravel." Every year we have been putting more money in for gravel. I think we're putting as much gravel on as we ever did. Maybe it's just costing us a little more. The gravel may be going up in price, but I think the trucking is really what costs us. So that's what we have to watch. The price of fuel, diesel fuel is expensive now. We're going to be paying quite a bit more. But I just wanted to make sure that we stuck with our same fractures we always have.
Thank you, Councillor Westgate. Yes, Andrew, please.
Thank you, Mayor Case, and to Councillor Westgate. I do want to flag that I did have the main northerly supplier that our gravel's been coming from for years now. They did reach out and say it's not necessarily a matter of increase in price, which we will see this year for the 70%. It's a matter of not being able to obtain the product. They just said there was a chance in 2023, the current year, they wouldn't be producing 70%. Now, they did suggest they could. there would be delays because the pit that it comes from happens to be on a no winter or a half load season road, so it'd have to wait until May 1st. It's possible, but that's the flag I want to put down, that it's not a matter of necessarily increased cost, which of course is true for this year, but we just may not be able to get it. On the note of Dolomite, there is a couple local townships that use a portion of it, that the increased price in Dolomite has gone through the roof for this year, like big time. So yeah, it's just a flag. I think everybody's kind of in the similar situation with the 60%. It may require a little more gravel to obtain the same condition of roads, but we're not entirely sure at this point.
Thank you. Anybody else on council want to get on? Yes, Councilor Morris.
I support the $60,000 increase. It's a commodity that if we don't use, we'll just stockpile it. So therefore, like, might be 60,000 cheaper next year. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, well, thank you, Councilor Morris. Now, Councilor Morris, not to lead from the chair, but could I take that as a motion?
Yes, I will make that motion that we increase the gravel budget by $60,000.
Do we have a seconder to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Manning. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And not to push council, and again, this budget definitely does not have to be passed today, but is there any more discussion on the salt shed / wash bay situation before we move on at this point in time? And again, this is not to push anybody. We can take as many days as we need to pass this budget. I want it to be a very thorough discussion. Amanda, did you have a question? No? Anybody? We'll leave it at that for now. Very good. Thank you. Okay, council, I'm gonna open it up now. Everybody's had a chance to look at the budget. I don't intend on going through this line by line. I can, if you wish, but I know there's been lots of information given. Is there anything else at this time to do with the budget the council wants to bring up? Councilor Morris.
Yeah, a few things here. Under the operation, the stray cat program, we put $3,200 into it last year and it was never touched. Am I getting by this that we're putting another 3,200 in, or just leaving that 3,200 there?
The 3,200 is the annual amount. The invoice hadn't been received at the point in time that the budget was created.
But we did spend it?
I believe it was spent. It
Okay.
came in late December.
The other thing I'd like to bring to council's attention is we had a lot of discussion the last 3 years with it, is the BMX park. It's not being used what it was and stuff like that. So I'd like to refer it to the rec board to come up with maybe some future uses of it or a better use of it, or whether we continue it. If we could, please.
So we're going to take that as a motion from Councilor Morris, or do you want direction, Amanda?
Thanks, Mayor Case. I think direction would be appropriate. I would note, if council's willing, Ryan Chamney, our Parks and Rec manager, may have some comments. This project is actually identified in our Parks and Rec master plan, and I think is on his work plan for this year.
Sure. Ryan, please. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. It definitely is identified within our Parks and Recreation operational plan, strategic plan for this year. It's a great item to be discussed absolutely with our Parks and Recreation Committee. Moving this project forward on what we do within that space will definitely involve some community consultation and some plans and strategic direction identified. And again, having that come through our Parks and Recreation Committee is definitely a great start to that process as well. But again, just to be clear, it is identified in our operational work plan for 2023.
So direction has been given to send it back to the rec board for some potential opportunities for that property. It is valuable property. I mean, there's lots of it there. So we'll look forward to hearing back on those particular items. Council, would you like us to go through the book? Would it make it easier if we went through heading by heading, or Does anybody else have something they want to bring up right now? Because it's whatever's easiest for council. And we had a little discussion about this. And I know lots of people had some items they want to bring up. Councilor Morris.
I'm happy with the operating, as of now. I do have some comments when we get into capital.
So Trevor, maybe just to keep us on line here, if you don't mind, let's take us, let's go to capital. That Councilor Morris has brought it up. And we'll just make sure that we don't miss anything here. It's a very well put together booklet, but let's go to capital if we can, please.
Okay. I've produced a separate spreadsheet. I'm going to go off the separate spreadsheet rather than the binder. It's a collapsing of everything that's in there and also a summary of what's been put into reserves from prior years. So for the clerk's department in minor capital, we have computers, which is an annual ongoing budget. We've been fairly frugal with that in past years because we utilized funds from other sources. Strategic plan, it's on the go this year. It's been deferred. It's again one of the legacy issues from the last strat plan. We did secure red funding. We have to be completed the red funding portion of it by June 30th, 2023. So we are somewhat on a timeline with that one fairly quickly. Well, pardon me, that's for the wayfinding signage.
Yeah.
The strategic plan, sorry, is for guidance for staff from council and the residents in terms of what direction we're going to go for the remaining term of this council. The exercise last time was fairly thorough. We want to continue that so that we have all that input and understanding of what is expected. Zoning bylaw update is a project that is jointly between ourselves and the county at the upper tier. We're paying a portion of it.
Trevor, maybe if you don't mind, just for the folks that are up there, maybe the total amount of money attached to that as well.
30,000. Asset management plan, facility condition assessment, $35,000. Again, it's part of the requirements for our asset management plan renewal that we're trying to keep update. And we have a July 1st, 2024 date on that. And that's a full rewrite of our asset management plan. And this is the biggest component of it. Office furniture, we secured 0% financing at $60,000 being paid out over 3 years. So we're utilizing that. And as a capital lease, we're doing it over a 3-year period. This is year 2 of the 3. Then we have the wayfinding signage. Again, I apologize. That's for where we have the red grant and a deadline that's looming of July 30th, 2023 to have that project. Bridge and culvert, pardon me, sorry. The next, we're going to move into sidewalk replacement and public works. 10,000 annual budget for sidewalk replacement as necessary. Bridge and culvert inspections, $15,000. It is a requirement legislated every 2 years to complete. We have what is referred to in our budget as Watford paving for 20,000. Again, like sidewalks, it's for emergent paving needs. Municipal drains, 100,000. That's our portion of municipal drains. It might be high, it might be low. It depends on exactly what happens, but that's the average we put in, and it's based on a roughly a 5-year rolling average of what it's cost us. Burnham Road, there are 6 sections of Burnham Road that are in the budget this year for a total of roughly $600,000. And it comes from our roads needs study, paved roads needs study, which I believe was completed in 2020, 2021. Thank you, Andrew. And again, as Mr. Jones brought to the table, there's been a few recent events which probably caused greater degradation to roads. Maybe we look to see whether or not it's still a valid report or whether or not it has to be refreshed to get the best bang for the buck. Churchill Line culverting. I'm going to turn that over to Andrew, but I believe there is a culvert that is an emergent issue right now that has to be repaired. Am I correct on that?
That's correct, Trevor. We did have a culvert that was identified late last year that has deteriorated, and you know we've been patching it. just to get us through the winter, but it will need replacing in the spring.
The next line, I'm going to try to get my paper so I'm reading the right line, is Churchill Line, $144,000. Again, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. It's for a portion of Churchill Line refinish.
Thanks, Trevor. This portion of Churchill Line is at the very westerly end. It was identified in the paved road study as a portion that needs replacing. Further to that, we have been noticing there's some areas that we've had some settlement and some soils issues that we have addressed by removing the asphalt as well as the granulars underneath. We've installed geotextile to stiffen up the soil, and it still seems to be eroding, and we're having some issues. So we would like to address that and get some geotech and engineering on it and replace it properly so we can stop band-aiding it and get this fixed up so it's safe to travel.
Next item for 200,000 is Industrial Drive extension. We have sold the last remaining lot on Industrial Drive. Access to that is part of the contract, and we have to supply that to the individual. Pardon me. Next, we have 4 culverts. First one being Site 14, Whiz Beach Road. It's steel beam guide rail and end markers replacement or upgrades for 40,000. Site 41, the Ald Richmond Drain concrete erosion protection at footings for 20,000. Site 60, First School Road, repair erosion, install steel beam guide rails and end markers for 48,000. And Site 62, Confederation Line, repair erosion and install end marker signs for 55,000. After that comes the engineering for the Sunset Erie St. Clair John Street Water Main Infrastructure Project, for which we have a partnership grant with the province and the feds to start construction and finish that project by, I believe it's 2025. So we have to get it engineered at this point in time in order to meet the deadlines for construction. Next item is a 2011 Silverado replacement truck 384 for 60. Item after that is a tandem. The Volvo, which is 2010, is due for replacement. It's $400,000. It's going to be great. We might put the order in today. We will not see it for 3 years. Next item is a V-plow attachment. Again, wear and tear on the existing attachments. This is needed sooner than later. 20,000. Then we get into the salt shed, for which we have presently just a shade under $1.8 million of $750 in this year's budget, plus a prior year accumulation sitting in reserves of over $1 million. I think we've spoken about that and the option to scale back to bring it in at 1.1. Next item is aggregate storage at the Watford Garage, $50,000. It's to clean that site and make sure that it's accessible. Next item is the wood chipper for Public Works, so that when they are out for emergency situations, rather than close the road, cut everything, throw it in the ditch, then come back after the road's open to pull everything out of the ditch and take it away. They can just pulverize it as they go, or pulverize it at one time to make it a lot safer for the individuals working there. It's 88,000. Then we get into the Zion line. Again, it was in the budget last year for several patches in areas for a total of, it started at 269,000. Then the increases throughout the year took it up to 429. We passed a motion in May of last year to increase it. 429 wasn't sufficient. The quotes came in higher than that, so we came back and included what it would take to finish it, the work that was prescribed based on those quotes. So it's sitting now at 629. Next, we move into recreation. Flagpole, I believe the flagpole, if I'm correct, is for Warwick Ballpark. $5,000. A revitalization of the old fire hall / Watford Museum of $100,000. That is about 5 different projects that it's going to start doing the rehabilitation to that building. Next item is $17,500. It's for a lawnmower to assist in cemetery operations. Then Watford Library, asphalt shingles with soffit and drainage renewal for $17,500. $27,000 for Watford Arena control panels upgrade. I don't know exactly what that is. I will turn it over to Mr. Chamney.
Thank you, Trevor. Yes, so the control panel upgrades, replacing essentially the starters and timing controls to run our 2 brine compressors in the arena, refrigeration. This was identified last year during shutdown by Drennan Refrigeration as a project that should be addressed in the short term. We referred to it at that point to where we are today, budget considerations.
Next item is a replacement of the 2014 Ford vehicle used by Recreation, $35,000. After that is the resurfacing of the tennis and sports courts. Our portion that we budgeted is $50,000. We also have a grant from Ontario Trillium Fund capital anointment of $107,900. So it's $160,000 project. Our hook of it is 50. And then Watford Library, there is issues with the foundation wall, and the plan for remedying it calls for a cost of roughly $85,000 to rehabilitate the building. And the final project within recreation is the paving of the parking lot at the north end of the LCC. It's $190,000. We move into sewer. These projects are administered and the budgets are provided by our partner Aqua. There is effluent filter head maintenance. It's annual, $2,000. Pump station clean out, $2,500. Fix sewer laterals, $10,000. Weed spraying, so there's no encroachment on the ponds, for $10,000. And a 3-year program going on for the sand filter removal and replacement, $60,000. Just for record, even though we budgeted 60, they secured tighter pricing in 2022 that it came in under budget. We're going to err on the side of caution and go higher, and if we have a come in, we'll be happy. Then we have Warwick Fire Department. They have boots replacement, 150. I don't think that's going to be current anymore. Pagers of 900. Scuba bottles, SCBA bottles of 1,100, and a bunker gear replacement. I believe it's, if I'm correct, Chief Goodhill, it's 2 units at $9,600.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little right around $4,000 is that. 4,000 plus just for the bunker gear, and then boots and on top of that.
Now we move into water, again administered by our partners at Aqua. Hydrant maintenance, 2,000, annual budget item. Maintain an inventory of repair parts, 5,000. It's come a long way. They didn't have any a few years ago. Valve replacement, 10,000. A program we complete with Blue Water Power. It's the meter replacement program whereby we're getting rid of old antiquated meters and installing new ones that have beam eyes, rotary rating, and we've seen a lot of positive impacts of that program. It's $50,000. And finally, from what was in the original is the Watford Fire Department Scott Air bottles, 6,000. Scott Air packs, 10,000. Bunker gear, 12,000. The drying rack, which was in there As mentioned, it's now been pulled and is in below. And then we have the structural remediation. We had 350,000 in the budget for this year. Quotes came in significantly higher, so we've added another 300,000 for the structural remediation of that building to make it safe. And then, as mentioned, we have the changes that described earlier for the floor at the Watford Fire Hall, 20,000. Backup generator for the Watford Hall, 13. We moved the bunker drying gear and added the ERP or Keystone upgrade or replacement for 270, giving us a total of now 4649150. Questions, folks?
Well, first off, just to let council know, Trevor and I have had quite a bit of discussion over this budget. And I actually asked him to put this together because it sort of brings everything in from the booklet into a 3 or 4 pager, which makes it very easy to kind of follow along. Now, that doesn't mean that everything and anything is here. There's still stuff in this book that may not be here, information, supporting information, but a lot,
Information, but all the projects are in there.
which is really good. Makes it a little easier for us. So I'll open it up to questions on what Trevor's just presented. Does anybody? Yes, Councillor Manning.
Just a quick question on the sand removal replacement. You said that's spread over 3 years. Is it 60,000? Is that every year?
Every year.
So, okay.
I believe this is the last year of the 3 years.
Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I'm not very comfortable with taking this much from reserves. It didn't put us in the doomsday position that we were in to cover before with the reserves. So I got a question, the wood chipper. Now, Andrew, when I talked to you about it, that was going to improve efficiency. $88,000, I don't know, in my opinion, we can do without it. The other main one I had was the North Arena parking lot. Ryan, I can't, sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to look at you. Ryan, it's been like that for as long as I can remember. With this budget this year being so tight, I can't justify $190,000. I think that was my only other thing. The one thing I wanted to discuss, though, that was brought up at the rec meeting was purchasing this lawnmower to do our own mowing and landscaping, I should say, at cemeteries. I've done a lot of thinking on this because I've been involved with the cemetery board for many years. I don't think it's a good idea, Ryan, and I'll say why. Last year, we had a lot of problems because of weather, rain, couldn't get it done in that. We're on a limited work schedule, as far as I understand, from Monday to Friday. If it rains Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we need the grass cut Saturday or Sunday to keep up. I'd like to let this project go for now, because I think we can, first of all, I like private enterprise. I don't want to take somebody's like occupation away from them. But I think because the private contractor, we get 7-day-a-week coverage. I can't see going to 5 with the weather we had last year. That's all I have. Thank you.
So Ryan, I'll let you respond to that if you wish.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Morris. I think ultimately I would just respond by saying I certainly respect the points that you've mentioned, and just sort of leave it at that.
So Councillor Morris, you've mentioned some things that you'd like to pull out.
Yes.
So really, at the end of the day, we need a motion to pull those items out. So you can make a motion. Do you want a motion for each item, Madam Clerk? That's the way I normally would do it. So I'll allow you to go back, and if you wish, it's up to you.
One at a time, and then we can have discussion on them, I guess. I'd like to pull the motion for the wood chipper, or make a motion to pull the wood chipper from the budget for savings of 88,000.
Council, do we have a seconder to that motion? Pull the wood chipper. Deputy Mayor?
I will second that motion.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Kallenberg. Any further discussion before I call the vote? Councillor Westgate.
What are we doing now? Are we renting one every time?
Thank you, Councillor Westgate. No, currently we're not renting a wood chipper. We haul it to our our disposal area, which is located in the Nauvoo road shop. So it gets piled there. So we truck it, each limb individually. Well, not individually. We put as much as we can into a truck and truck it to the shop.
How many times a year would you use that?
So our tree maintenance schedule, it's not necessarily defined. It's based on workload. So we fit in the tree trimming when it allows, as well as, of course, any kind of wind events. So it's sporadic throughout the year. As far as a high level want, this was something that was identified that would add efficiency. But I wouldn't stress if they had to, you know, if you're going to choose something to remove, this is something that in consultation with staff, they were okay and recognized that that was a high number. You know, $88,000 is a lot of money. So they did recognize that.
Follow up, Councillor Westgate?
No, I'm fine now.
Anybody else have any question on the particular item? Removal of the chipper from the budget? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you. Some Morse, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Case. So I guess the next thing I had was removing the mower and continuing to use private contractor for this cemeteries for a savings of $17,500 off the capital. I make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Just for a little bit of clarity. So that piece, I believe, Madam Clerk, also included some extra help, obviously, right? So maybe just want to make sure that we do this properly, because obviously we don't get the mower, we don't need the extra help. So maybe Ryan, I'll call on you maybe.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. So when discussing the cemetery operations, we did identify the need for one additional staff and one part-time staff or one student. In further discussions regarding our current operational budget, we did in fact have the full-time staff already built in to our 2022 budget. So in fact, this would only result in the hiring of a student employer. So if we don't move forward with Parks and Recreation maintaining the cemetery, it would be in fact the removal of a part-time summer student position.
And I guess the other piece of this, we're talking budget, we're talking operations today and all that. So the other thing is that I believe that our contract with our provider may have ran out at the end of last year. I'm looking for clarity of that. Am I correct, Amanda?
Yes, we did. We've done a couple 1-year extensions with our current provider. I believe the current contract actually ends in early April, but in advance of the next season, yes.
Okay, so just to group everything together here and just make sure everybody understands, that's what I want to make sure when we make this motion. So the motion is to eliminate the lawnmower. So that also eliminates that part-time staff position when it comes to regards to the cemetery operations. And it also leaves us, and maybe we should take care of it now. I'll look for some counsel on this. Are we looking at extending that contract? Is it one of those things we can do for one more year and revisit this and see how things are going? Again, it's an ongoing issue with the new community hall of how much staff we actually need there to run it on the off season when grass isn't being cut. So I guess that's my question. Maybe Amanda or Ryan, maybe you'd like to address that, but I'd like to put this, if Mr. Morris is okay with it, all in one motion.
Yes, thank you. I mean, when we went through the discussions on whether or not our operations could handle this, we did feel that we could. Having the full-time staff already within the budget, I think helps that process as well. But I also think it would be a good exercise to run a year and see how our staffing complement does in fact work out with the ELCC operations and our current staff operations outside as well. Within our current agreement with the contractor for cemetery operations, there is certainly the caveat to continue on and renew for an additional year, similar to what we've done the past 2 seasons. So we can certainly open those discussions and bring back a renewal agreement to council at an upcoming meeting.
Yes, Councillor Manning.
What's the contract? What's the yearly cost on the contract?
Ryan?
Yes, thank you. Through Mayor Case to Councillor Manning. Over the past 5 seasons, including this one, our contract averages out to about high 40s, $48,000 per year is what we pay for the grass cutting maintenance of the cemetery.
Okay, anybody else from council? I apologize, Councillor Morris. I've taken your motion, but I just wanted to make sure that we had it all looked after. Now, is direction clear to staff on the motion? I just want to make sure everybody's on the same wavelength and we don't leave something. So as Ryan said, I mean, they would go back. Amanda, I'm assuming you guys would go back to the provider we have now, have that discussion. The provider may not even want to do it again. So you have to ask them and then bring that information back to council. But if everybody's clear on the motion, and Councillor Morris, you're okay with some of the changes that have been brought up?
Yes, they're quite fine. Thank you very much. And that gives a little more direction to the cemetery board too. Makes their job easier.
Councillor Westgate.
I'd just like to point out that we can hardly get a lawnmower and put a man on it for 48,000 a year. It's cheaper to go with the contractor.
So I think what's been established today is we get a vote on this. We give it another year and we see what happens and we can revisit it. Now it's been such a discussion. Did I have a seconder to Councillor Morris's motion? I don't believe I did. Do we have a Councillor Westgate? Any further discussion on this one before I leave it? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Morris, did you have one more?
Yeah, I hate to steal everybody's thunder here. The north parking lot paving at the arena, $190,000 I'd like to see cut. And we can always look at this in the future. It's not something that has to be done. I'd love to see a bigger area for the Zamboni, but this year I just can't see it. So I make that motion to cut $190,000 from the capital budget regarding the parking at north of the arena.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Manning, and then I'll open it up for discussion. So we have a mover and a seconder. So does anybody have any comments on this? Mr. Jarrett?
For a change, I do. Do we want to cut the 190 or do we want to cut it back to a certain amount and still allow opportunity for Ryan and the staff to build an apron for the Zamboni so that we aren't clouding up the ice with mud and everything coming back in?
If anybody got a suggestion on $1, I have no problem with that because I do understand that Zamboni needs a little room, but Ryan, have you got a figure maybe?
Yes, so that's certainly a great option, alternative. I would probably say that amount, concrete pad in and around the garbage enclosure and for the Zamboni would be in the probably between $50,000-$60,000.
I'd like to amend my motion then, Mayor Case, to cut the budget for the north parking lot from $190,000 to $60,000.
And that's to provide that concrete pad for the Zamboni and for the garbage enclosures. Very good, very good. Is the seconder okay with the amendment?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Any further discussion on this particular item? Councillor Westgate.
Did we get a new catch basin put in there so the water doesn't run across the parking lot? We were going to with the last addition there and drainage.
Thank you, Councillor Westgate. Yes, we did. The drainage work along the backside of the arena and into the parking lot was done, excuse me, as part of the arena workshop project. And that portion of that project has been completed.
So it worked fine if we went from the catch basin over to the garbage and the Zamboni could both that area? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? Is it clear to staff? Everybody's clear on it? Okay, seeing no other discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Councilor Morris, anything else? While I'm at you?
I think I'll let somebody else have a turn.
All right. Not to put anybody on the spot, but I am going to work around the room. Councilor Westgate, did you have anything?
The resurfacing of the floor in Warwick, is that the hall,
Fire station,
the fire station part? The concrete part?
just the concrete part.
Councillor Westgate, I can answer that. What that includes is a grinding down of the rough surface of the apparatus floor bay, and then putting a poly coat paint with an anti-slip grip in it, so that it creates a long-term surface.
Oh, it's an epoxy you're putting on.
Correct, yeah.
In our fire hall up here, when we're fixing it, do we know what we're doing? Have we seen the drawings? How involved is this? It seems like a lot of money to me when I thought they could have tied it back with ready rod and another structure on the outside and pulled the whole wall back in. Have we got a drawing on that I could look at sometime?
Ryan?
Yes, thank you. And to Councillor Westgate. That's a great question and great points. We've been, as you know, we do have a consultant that we've contracted to provide us with detailed drawings, tender ready package, that we have started this process back in April. I did receive the first draft of the drawings on Tuesday. There need a few revisions to it, as well as the first draft of what the tender document would look like. However, we haven't had time as staff to go through that and edit it accordingly. And I didn't think it was fair to throw an unedited copy and an unfinished set of drawings and information to council this late in the process. The points that you mentioned about what of the work that needs to entail, it is part of what's been identified by the engineer and within the condition assessments. The initial numbers that we received from the consultant are identified within our asks, both of what was in last year's budget and in this year's budget. But we do not have that true number until these drawings are finalized, which we also reported back at the last meeting that we would provide to council for your considerations and review at a future meeting, which we will definitely do. But we do not have what that exact final number will be. But the work that's to be done, stability to the south exterior walls, timber supports, brick spalling, both on the front and back side, purlins, both of the interior that are failing. When you get into stability issues on older buildings, the costs will be there.
Follow up, Councillor Westgate?
No, not really. I just like to see the drawings and see what they're doing.
I guess that is, I know what you've been trying to get the information for us, Ryan, and it's just one of those things that is, I mean, it's an awful lot of money. It obviously has to be fixed. We got to get moving on. This has been going on now, correct me if I'm wrong, has this been going on for a year and a half now? If not longer. I mean, so it's something that needs to be fixed, but it would be nice. And I know it's sometimes hard when you're getting into an older building and trying to fix it to get accurate numbers, but it would be nice to have a rather recent estimates to go on, especially at budget time. So I know there's numbers there. You guys have been working at it, but it is a little bit concerning when you're trying to set a budget and you may find you might be out a significant amount of money either way, but it's something that, in my opinion, needs to get done. has been going on for a long time, but I agree with Councillor Westgate's comments. I mean, it's a different time, a different world, I guess, that we live in, and it's too bad that it's the extremes we need to go to, but in the same time, we need to protect the people that are working in those buildings and make sure that they're looked after. So, okay, Councillor Westgate, did you have anything else?
The only other thing that bugs me a little bit is the water lines on Sunset, Erie Street, St. Clair. Some of them, I know we need to redo the streets, but like Sunset, it's all curbs and road. The water line is in the road, I believe. I just hate to tear up a good road right yet.
Andrew?
If I could, Councillor Westgate, so that project was identified in our domestic water, so the Wofford Water master plan. That particular material of water main was put in an age where they see a high failure rate. So that's why that particular road was identified. And the other roads that were identified were a mix between the stormwater master plan, the paved road study, as well as the water master plan. Trying to find a best fit where the dollars can go the furthest. So replacing a deteriorated water main made of typically cast iron with the other roads. And then of course, lack of storm sewers, the sanitary is in good shape, relatively speaking, but yeah, whether there's storm sewers that are required or curbing and road condition. So that was how that was identified. Oh, and grant funding. Sorry, thank you, Amanda. The major component was the grant funding. So just a little refresher, and for the new council members, in 2021 we applied. Trevor did allude to it earlier. We applied to ICIP, which is Investing in Canada Infrastructure, called the Green Stream program. And in 2021, we submitted a proposal, which we were successful. We got word in 2022 that we were successful. What that boils down to, out of 3.1 total eligibility and costs, the township would receive $2.2 million in funding. So the federal component of that, if I can just flip to it quick, is 70. Yes, federal's 40%, provincial was 33.3. We would be left with 26.67% funding.
Yes, I know if it wasn't for the grant, I wouldn't want to look at it at all. And some of the streets I think should be done anyway, but ones like Sunset, that's a perfectly good street. If the cast will last a little bit longer, we still have other areas in town where it's cast. I know some we've already replaced because it was plugging up and we were getting iron deposits in the water, but I guess it's nice to get it replaced, but when the street needs, it's time to do it.
There's one more factor that came up after we actually submitted this. Sunset is a route for the increased size in sewer for the development to the north, the Heritage Creek. So that has been identified as the location to upgrade the sewer. So that could be done at the same time.
I think there's been a couple of water main breaks on John Street in the last year and a half as well, so.
It's only a small part of John Street that hasn't already been done.
Councillor Westgate, while I'm with you, is there anything else you want to bring up today?
No, not on the capital.
Councillor Manning.
Yeah, I just have one question, probably for Trevor, regarding the truck, the Volvo Tandem. You said it's gonna take 3 years for that to be procured?
Yes, we will be able to secure it in a matter of probably an hour. We use Canoe LAS buying group. We found it very beneficial to us. However, to then get the Viking Civics component of it, which is going to be the plow attachment and everything set up, they are 3-year backlog right now. Our last truck, which we ordered 2020, or was it 2021? We still haven't got.
I guess my question is there a way we could spread that 400,000 over those 3 years for that payment?
We actually won't make the payment until we actually take delivery of the vehicle. So it'll just sit in a reserve until that time.
Thanks.
Nothing else at this time, Councillor Manning?
Nothing else.
Very good, sir. Deputy Mayor.
I think we've covered off, between the three of us already, most of the things. I guess my only question is, it's just the 2014 F-150. Can we actually replace a pickup for $35,000?
Based on the time that we did the budget, yes. Do I think we can now? It all depends on what the pricing contracts are in the LAS buying group at this point in time. But if we can't, you will see us come back and present to you an option or ask to get it deferred until we can.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have now, Tom.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I guess I'm going to go through a bit of a list here. And I guess the question I'm asking is how important some of these things are. And the first one's the V-plow attachment. It's only a $20,000 item. And I'll maybe name them all and then I'll go to the source for a question for the answer. The Watford Garage aggregate storage is another one that's on my list here. And the wood chipper's already been looked at. So maybe what I'll do at this time, maybe Andrew, I can ask you about those items. I also had a question on the pickup trucks, but I'll stick with those three items for now. Andrew, if you'd be so kind to maybe address those.
Thank you, Mayor Case. First with the V-plow attachment, fortunately we were able to get a good look at it just prior to Christmas when we had that snow event. And so staff did evaluate it and they determined that they could probably push that out 1 to 3 years. It did function well. They, any welding, supporting they had to do, painting, they took care of just before that snow event. So they're comfortable with pushing that off for 1 year to 3 years. With respect to the Watford Garage aggregate storing, recently we've found out with respect to the cold mix storage. Currently, it's stored in an old dump truck box and it's completely deteriorated and now they're digging into the gravel dirt underneath. The rest of the aggregates are kind of stored arbitrarily in no defined area. So to provide proper storage for the cold mix as well as the other aggregates, it'd be nice to have a proper pad with defined areas with blocking. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that answer. It sounds like really there isn't anything really for storage at this present time. It's basically disintegrated. So I will make a motion that we eliminate the V-plow attachment from the current budget if I get support. So I will make that motion from the chair if I can get a seconder, being that there's 3 years of lifetime left. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Kallenberg. Discussion on this item, if any. Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. Very good. So council, is there anything else on here? The big item, and I'm not trying to push a decision, but the big item here still is the salt shed and what we want to do there. And again, no decision has to be made today, but basically there's $1 million that's been put aside. The new model, the new, I guess, example that was mentioned today of 6,000 square feet, the $1 million probably will basically more or less cover it. Is that something that we want to address now? Is that something we want to think about? Do we want more information on from staff? Do we want to go back to the original model, which was the 10,000 square foot model, which was about $1.7 million? I guess I'm just asking that question because that is one of the larger capital items that we have in front of us. And I just want to make sure that that we have more discussion on it, or if it's going to be backed up to the next time we meet on budget, that's fine too. But it's an issue, an item that needs to be addressed one way or the other. Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to speak to it. I think going down to the 6,000 square feet is a good start. It's more than we have now. And like Andrew said, he looked into some other options like a bright span, or we talked about a weed cover, which has some savings as well. I know there's some concerns maybe about the roof, but depending on the kind you get, we've used them at a couple of our fertilizer storage facilities that have been there for 10 years with no issues at all. We did have something go through the roof and the system they were there within a couple of days and just replaced one panel in like 3 hours and they were gone. So I think there are other options, and I think we should look at that, but I'm comfortable with 6,000 square feet for now.
So that 6,000 square foot model, just for the record, was more or less, it was not a Tarpola building, it was the traditional building, Andrew?
That's correct. The 6,000 square foot option would be a pre-engineered, with galvanized truss, steel cladding. And 10 or 12 foot foundation wall, reinforced foundation wall to hold the storage.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on this, or is this something we want to leave to the next time we meet? Councillor Westgate.
I think we should get prices on it right away if we can. The galvanized steel will be good, and I'd rather go with a hard roof than a tarpaulin or whatever, because that building's been there for as long as I can remember now, with no repairs except for the last few years where the wood is starting to fail. And then it'll be there for as long as we need it for pretty well, in the near future anyway.
Anybody else at this time? What I would need, if we decide to move forward today, is I would need a motion to go ahead at that $1 million price tag. So staff has something to go by, and then they can start the pricing situation if council sees fit to do that. Otherwise, like I say, there's nothing saying that this budget needs to be passed today. And if there's more information council wants, we can ask for that as well. So I'll maybe bring it up one more time and I'll leave it at that. And Councillor Westgate.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead with the $1 million for the salt shed.
It's actually 1.1.
Okay, 1.1 million.
Time really does cost money, doesn't it, eh?
It's always been 1.1.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Kallenberg.
Get pricing.
Any further discussion on that particular item?
I just want to bring.
Yes. Mr. Jarrett.
Cumulatively, if we go through, that's 1.535.500 that we have now removed, just so that everyone has a number.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Trevor. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Trevor, when you made that, that's what we've saved so far when we were 700 and some odd $1,000 in deficit. Now we're in a surplus. Is that, am I understanding that right?
This is capital. Your capital
Yes.
overspend was 1.7. So now you've carved out 1.535.
Okay, thank you.
So everybody's clear on that? So Trevor, I mean, I know you don't have your calculator handy, but we started off today with a potential, of a 3.50% tax increase. We've done some shaving. Would you like us to take a 10-minute break or 5-minute break and give you an opportunity to come back with a different number? I'm not saying we're done here today by any means. And before we do that, I have to apologize to our fire chiefs that are both here. One guy's on Zoom and the other guy's been sitting here. I should ask the chiefs, when it comes to your budget and what's laid out here today, I know you've worked with Mr. Jarrett on this, gentlemen. Is there anything else you wanted to add or discuss today through the budget process? And again, my apologies. I should have went to you earlier. Maybe I'll start with Chief Sitligan first.
No, I think I'm done with the way it's set up right now.
Chief Goodhill.
Well, recognizing that it is going to be a tight year, what we've put forward will fit perfectly for this year.
Thank you, gentlemen. Again, my apologies. I should have went to you. Sooner. So is council okay with taking maybe a 5 to do anything, Trevor? 10 minutes do it for you?
It depends on the ask.
So the ask is to try to determine maybe where we are at this particular time. I'm currently on what would like a tax increase we're looking at with some of the changes that have been made today. And bring it back to us. And then we have an idea. Like I say, then council continue on with the process or decide what they want to do. There might be a question from somebody from the public as well, which I will entertain as well. So does that give you the time to do that? Otherwise, we can do it another day.
It gives me enough time. I'm comfortable with the 3.5 that we've proposed. Based on my notes, we haven't changed anything operationally other than pulling a half PY for a student. which is going to roughly be about $15,000 from the operational side. To me, I think the 3.5 ask I'm comfortable with. I would not want to go any higher considering where it is. I might leave it up to council to decide whether or not they're comfortable with that number. Then that's where we sit, regardless of what you do. Just so for perspective, next year when we meet again for this, I'll be going in and the proposal you'll see will be based on where we started at. And you guys tell me where you want to go from that point of reference and we can make the adjustment. But just for point of reference, every time you go up 1%, you're adding 27,000 in tax revenue. You go down 1%, you come down 27,000. If you've pulled out the position that you have that ties into the cemetery, you've reduced it basically a 0.5 percentage point.
So some of the other things we've done here today, Trevor, some of the reductions and so on, I guess I'm kind of looking for a number at the end of the day of where we are from a tax increase standpoint. You're saying you're confident to still be in that 3.50 range?
3 to 3.5, because operationally you removed that
Yes.
portion.
Okay,
Capital isn't funded by tax revenue.
exactly.
Capital is funded from reserves.
Yes, very good. Okay, sounds good. Okay, council, anybody else have anything they want to discuss today on this budget? Councilor Morse?
No, I just wanted to bring up that last year, we were very frugal and we only had a 0% tax increase. So I think this year I can accept a tax increase, whatever council decides.
Great, thanks, Councilor Morris. Yes, it was a 0% last year. And to be very honest with you, it has created some challenges this year because of that budget last year. But anyways, we're moving forward. That's what we do. Does anybody from the public wish to address council on any of these items brought up today in the budget? Or Mr. Alcott, do you want to come up, Bob? Because I can hear you that. No, but they can't. The people on YouTube can't hear you. I know you can speak aloud, but I'd love to.
Well, my only concern is I've notified all the counselors about is that half-finished parking lot. And I guess not to take up too much time, but to me, it's a capital project. So you're shifting an asset from capital to another asset, and it doesn't affect the 3.5% if you do it that way. And it finishes it off nicely. There's also a safety concern at that parking area. I don't know how many have actually driven on it. I did for the first time myself last week, and I couldn't believe that there's like a 20-foot drop to the CN tracks protected by some saplings. Not trees, just saplings essentially, and there should be a barrier up there. And you might as well, I think you might as well do it all at the same time, and it's shifting one asset to another asset. And if you got an extra few $100 there, you could put a security camera up too, because focus it under the bridge and maybe reduce some illegal merchandising. But that's, that's my opinion. I'm not here to raise any arguments or anything. It's just my opinion. And as a ratepayer, I think it would look a lot better if you're going to put a sign up that says this is a municipal parking lot. If you want it to be a pile of gravel, I think it would be better to have it look like a parking lot. That's all. So that's basically what I have to say.
Oh, thanks.
And I got a lot of other funny little things to say too, but
You can just leave that for. And again, I think, and again, I do appreciate the comments. I know that the one night I went through there was a transport truck parked in there with a whole load on, which probably created a bit of a hole in there as well. So it definitely is something, I mean, from a safety standpoint, you make a very good point. Now that was on the budget. Correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't here last year, but was that not on council's budget last year, Mr. Jarrett?
Yes, it was. It was actually a fully finished parking lot, paved. And then an option came in to scale it back because we were seeing at that time significant price increases on paving. And in order to make it work budget wise, the amount of work was then changed to a gravel parking lot, figuring that was sufficient for the time being and be revisited down the road as funds became available.
Okay, so that's why it wasn't on our list this year. So, yes, Amanda. So I actually did reach out to Trevor after the correspondence came out and asked the question about, because I didn't see it on this particular budget. It wasn't last year's budget, is what I was told. So that's why it wasn't here this year. What kind of price tag was affixed to that project, just so we understand the math, Trevor?
Off the top of my head, I believe it was an extra $70,000 to get it paved last year. I don't know what it would be going forward. We'd have to get an engineered report to do it, which is why we bumped it out. I believe it's in the 2025 long-term capital plan to get it paved. I can't remember where we parked it, but we have parked it somewhere to be revisited. If we want to look at it sooner, it's a quick call. We can get the engineers to take a look at it and go from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that information. Thank you very much, Mr. Alcock. Yes, Councilor Morris.
Andrew, are we keeping the snow cleaned off that and everything like? Because I noticed the other day the snow wasn't off it.
During the recent big events we had, it has not been our focus at the time. We were leaving it to later. We are in general clearing the snow, but the snow event at Christmas, as well as this past one, it was not a priority.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on the budget discussion today? Any other concerns? Seeing none, how does council wish to proceed? It's up to council. I'm looking for direction on the budget. We can bring it back if there's more information needed. More investigation, or council also has the option of passing the budget today as well. So not to push council, just looking for some direction. Councilor Morris.
Yeah, I did notice, I think the county was looking at a 3 to 3.5% increase. And I noticed in the news when I read this morning, I think London came in at 3.1 something percent. So I think we're in the range of what everybody else is. And seeing that we had a 0% last year, I'm happy with the 3.5.
So again, that 3.5 could be 3.2, or it could be 3.1. Once Trevor has a chance to go back, but it will not succeed 3.5%. Am I correct, Mr. Jarrett?
My recommendation is a high of 3.5 at this point in time.
Very good. So Councilor Morris, not to push you on the hot seat, but you just made the comment. Is that a motion you're making or just a comment?
I think it's a motion, Mayor Case, that we have proposed a 3.5% tax increase. Maximum. And we do more discussion on where the final number may come in.
Councilor Westgate.
I can second that motion. That'll still keep us lower than anybody else in the county or in the area. So 3.5 after 0 is the end of the world.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion from council on this item? One thing that I want to bring attention to, and we haven't really mentioned it, we've all seen it, we've all read it. One of the other big factors and impacts on us financially this year is the increasing insurance rates that we are paying. Our insurance has gone up this year, probably the equivalent. I'm going to do the math real quick. It's probably a 3 or 4% tax increase all by itself, Mr. Jarrett.
It's 2.75.
So having that $65,000, am I correct? So our insurance has gone up $65,000 this year. And and unfortunately, just for everybody that's listening and watching today, there's really only two providers out there. And really, at the end of the day, really only one that's plays in the big leagues of municipal government. So this is an impact that we have no choice. This is something that affects us. It's a $65,000 hit. It's almost a 3% tax increase. So I just wanted to make mention of that all by itself. So when you look at what we're doing here, as much as I'm not a I'm not a believer and I don't like tax increases when you don't have to have them. It's a necessary evil to be able to do these things, move on as a municipality, but also just to pick up that extra cost in the insurance that we have to pay. And we're not the only ones. Every municipality that we talk to, some of us were just in Toronto and everybody's talking about this. It's a killer. There are some steps that are going to be taken in the future to hopefully work together with other municipalities to get a bit of a savings on this. And we'll go from there. So that was my only comment I wanted to make. It didn't come up, but the insurance issue is getting to be a tough one financially on us. So I just wanted to make that. So I do have a motion and I have a seconder. I'm going to call the question on the budget, basically being that it's a maximum of 3.5%. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So anyways, that takes us to the 2023 budget as presented. And we've made the motion to approve it. That takes us to bylaws. Madam Clerk, or am I missing something?
Thanks, Mayor Case. So with the motion on tax increases, we usually also have a motion on the budget itself.
Yes.
So I think from a staff perspective, we're just looking for some clarity on, is the budget approved with a 3.5% tax increase, or are there other amendments to be made? And if so, some direction on timing for that discussion would be appreciated.
So I think the amendments have already been made through motion, the corrections, the changes. So I think we've already completed that. We just did make a motion to approve the budget at a maximum of 3.5%. Again, we have to wait for Mr. Jarrett to do his math to understand exactly what it's going to be. So that motion was just made. All right, where am I missing you on this? I mean, the budget, I thought that motion covered the approval of the budget. If I'm missing something, please clarify.
Thanks, Mayor Case. Well, maybe I am missing something. So I believe the motion as was approved was to approve a tax increase up to a 3.5% maximum, and it did not speak to approval of the budget. And then also some clarity on what exactly information you're looking for from Trevor from a tax increment perspective.
So I'm going to say that that motion also included the approval of the budget process. And again, as spoke here many times, when I asked Trevor, if it was easy enough for him to come back and tell us if it's 3.1, 3.2, it's going to take a little bit of work. So that motion said up to a 3.5%. Obviously, Trevor will bring back the actual number to us. And that's what we're asking him to do. I mean, that's really just a matter of math. Am I correct?
Yeah, given that 2.75 of the tax increase is tied into insurance, I think I'm very comfortable coming in at 3.5 unless council has any other direction, because you've taken 20,000 out in terms, which equates to 0.75. We can come down to 3.1, anywhere in the 3.1 to 3.5 range. I'm very comfortable with even today. So
is everybody clear on that?
No.
I'm not seeing the gray area. You're going to have to be more specific.
So my apologies. I'm just looking to so if the budget approval was included in that motion as read, that's wonderful. And that clarifies that. Thank you. Just in terms of the tax increase. So I think Trevor's provided a range that would be acceptable to council. So clarity on what exactly is the tax increase that is being looked to be approved. Is it 3.1, 3.2, or 3.5? I think that's the clarity I'm seeking.
That's the same clarity, Madam Clerk, that I was seeking a little while ago when I asked Mr. Jarrett if it was easy enough for him to go out and change the numbers. So I think what council did through their motion, we don't know if it's going to be 3.2, 3.3. We did say up to a maximum of 3.5. So that motion was approved. A maximum of 3.5. So if it comes in under 3.5, that's a good thing for all of us. But we have, the motion was to a maximum of 3.5%. So if you're looking for me to give you that exact number, I can't give you that exact number until Trevor actually gives it to us, unless I'm missing something here.
I'm very content with 3.5.
This is.
Removing the 20. Could you provide clarity on removing the $20,000 from the part-time position that was included in the operational budget? What does that equate to as a tax rate? It's no longer 3.5, right?
3.5. We were not increasing taxes enough to cover the total shortfall. So by removing the 20,000, we're still going to be running in a shortfall and pulling from operational reserves to do that. 3.5 is still 3.5. We haven't taken enough money out of the budget for me to capitulate on the 3.5. However, if it's council's wish to come in under 3.5, we can compensate for that 20,000 because we had earmarked a certain amount that we're going to take out of operational reserves. So I can do that. So I can go down to 3.1 comfortably, or anywhere in that range of 3.1 to 3.5.
So let's make this easy because this is getting a little silly. It's okay. Is council okay with the 3.5? Councilor Morris.
I am always in favor of the taxes covering the operating costs, and we're still going to be a little short, which, okay, I can live with. It's a tough year. So I amend the motion to say 3.5%.
Second are okay with that. Councilor Westgate.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Very good. Is everybody clear? Thank you. We got everything else covered? Okay, number 7, bylaws. Bylaw 14 of 2023, confirming bylaw that bylaw 14 of 2023 be read the first and second time. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor, Councilor Morris, all in favor? Carried. Let's back it up a bylaw. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the bylaw? I forgot to do that. Councilor Morris, Councilor Manning, and it was already in favor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everybody that come today, and we appreciate the input. Have a good day.
And Linda's on the phone. I just want to thank all the staff here for their assistance throughout this process. It's truly a team effort for this.